I'm Tim Ventura from AmericanAntigravity.com, and I'm speaking today with John Searl, the father of modern anti-gravity. Well, John, I'd like to start by saying thanks for joining us. The legacy that you've created began over 50 years ago and has since influenced nearly every aspect of anti-gravity and free energy research. Most people don't realize this, but even in the 1960s, many British electrical engineering textbooks actually featured a section on the Searl Effect. The impact of your work is truly profound. Even researchers who don't believe in the Searl Effect won't argue that it's really defined our expectations for what anti-gravity is, as well as how it works. One thing that has changed over the last 50 years is our understanding of gravity in physics, which gives us a unique opportunity to revisit your work armed with decades of scientific progress to better understand it with. Your key innovation hardly needs an introduction. The Searl Effect generator, which seems to fulfill the promise of both free energy as well as a new form of anti-gravity propulsion. Can you tell us a bit about what the Searl Effect is and how you go about creating the effect with the SEG?
Well, the Searl Effect is simply a waveform on solid metal. And this has been the problem. Scientists will keep saying you cannot put a waveform in a magnetic sense on a lump of metal. Unfortunately, that is what I've done. And that is what I'm about to demonstrate on May the 9th and May the 10th. You can put a waveform in a magnetic field on a solid lump of metal.
Oh, so you're actually doing a demonstration in the near future?
Yes, in fact, May the 9th and 10th, I shall be showing it possibly that this material we have energized has a wave, magnetic wave. It has not got blocks of poles as manufacturers could do multi-poles. That's not a wave. There are standard poles, north and south. This is not. This is completely different. This is one cycle round the rim of that layer, one wave, and it steps from high value down to low value and then climbs back to the high value again in steps. There's no argument. That is a wave.
Sure. Well, there are energy and anti-gravity effects that the Searl Effect generator produces, but truly harnessing the anti-gravity effects required another innovation, the Searl IGV. This is basically a disc-shaped craft that looks like a UFO, and you've claimed that it's capable of lifting tons of weight. Can you tell us anything about the IGV and describe the anti-gravity effects for us a bit?
Well, first of all, the craft itself, I don't say it's anti-gravity because in my world, if it's anti-gravity, it would be drawn to the earth and held by gravity. What we accept is that the gravity is inversed, so that the craft is producing a gravity field back down at the surface of the earth. That pushes it up. But inside the generator of an IGV, it's slightly different to a generator for the house. There's a lot more material involved. The weight is massive, and therefore the amount of energy you're producing is immensely high. And it is this one big generator that stabilizes the disc. It's a slender disc, and it stabilizes it. So we got away with problems of stabilizing the vehicle in flight. So it can hover, it can move in any direction, and the secret of the angle of attack is the same as any aircraft, but we can switch that in any direction we want by gyro effects. So the engine is basically a heavy flywheel, it's a gyro, and it's also a static machine producing millions of volts.
Oh, so the gyroscopic effects from the multi-ring SEG that powers the disc craft are actually the same thing that stabilizes it.
So we've cut out a lot of unnecessary motors by a very simple one-engine system to produce the power, produce stabilization, and angle of motion. And this in itself saves a lot of engineering work.
Sure. Well, you've published a number of books on the Searl Effect, and they all state that the law of the squares is a key part to creating the effect. What exactly is the law of the squares, and how does it relate?
Yes, I know people think it's odd. A set of numbers can do this. I'm afraid we now know that that type of mathematics stopped being used about 5,000 years ago. Everything used to be designed on it. And I use it because I find that gives me the best solution of how much of this to use, how much of that to use, and in what order to put it. And this creates this immense static energy that we get.
Sure, sure. And that static energy comes from the SEG during operation, right?
Yes, yes. It's the magnetic field in motion against another field. The interaction between them create the high flow of static energy.
Oh, well, another key part of the Searl effect that you just touched on is the rotation. The SEG mechanically rotates during operation, which is a required part of both the energy generation and anti-gravity effects. How are rotation and magnetic fields related to the Searl effect?
Well, the generator which powers the IGV is in many respects the same as one for powering a house. The difference between them is the amount of mass that's involved. Secondly is we have two more elements involved, which we don't need in a domestic machine. Again, the velocity of the rollers sets are the key issue. Now, the simple thing about this is that such a generator is constant running. You never stop it. It's just left running. It's always fully charged before you even use anything. If you got in the car, you hop in, you switch on, away you go. You don't have to wait for energy to build up. It's already there, ready. Now, when you're idle, the generator charges to a certain level you set. Now that's like accumulator, all charged, ready to go when you switch on. To get a thing to live, we have to increase the load on the generator. We increase and increase it until at last the amount of energy stored has cooled the system so much that you have a superconductor type technology now installed. And the Earth magnetic field will push that away.
Oh, I see. I see. Interesting. You know, I've read books that described the Searl effect generator as a form of homopolar generator. And one of the things that I'd wondered about is whether the static might be an effect that a homopolar generator would exhibit. They definitely create a charge at the edges in the center of the disk, and that almost seems similar to some of the experiments that De Palma had done.
Well, yes, I know it's easy for scientists to fit some of the problems to what they know. Basically, what the SEG is, it's really like three auto generators, one above the other, placed on, and secondly is, one feeds into the middle one, that's in the one to the middle, that feeds into the outer one, which builds up an immense amount of power. But what you've got is a linear motor operating on a magnetic bearing. That's all it is. But you've got three of them, one above the other. One feeds into the middle one, then that feeds into the outer one. That builds up immense power.
Sure. Well, you've published numerous photos showing the disc-shaped IGV under construction in the 1960s, but the only photo actually showing it in flight has been disputed by a number of skeptics. Now, to make those skeptics happy, I'd like to ask if you have any other photos, video, or film showing the IGV in flight. And
yeah. Well, the straight answer, yes. The press did send given me very large photocopies. Unfortunate, when you have a meeting, you may have 400 people there, and you get a freelance reporter, seeing you busy, removes one or two and go. By the time you finish your meeting, you find them gone. It's too late to be able to do anything about it. That's the problem. Now with video, we got footage of videos, but I don't know if John Thomas told you, I got relieved of a lot of equipment and property. And I'm afraid most of the stuff has gone.
Sure. Well, you know, the Searl Effect is, I guess, what we might call a hot property. And unfortunately, many different people want a piece of that. And it makes sense that they would walk away with the different collected materials you put together over the years. Well, I've heard that the IGV creates a mirror-like reflective shield above the top of the craft while it's levitating, and a darkened shadow area directly below the hull. These light effects were interesting because they're comparable to effects that we've heard about in other experiments, and I was wondering if they might be the result of a gravitational field gradient.
Well, I know photos taken on tests, the craft skin obviously is a form of mirror, because underneath, when you take your photos and you develop them, they will take on a colouring pattern of the whatever's underneath, trees or that. If it is a dark sky, it will have dark colour. It reflects, it tends to reflect what is passing over or through, which rather suggests that there's some sort of mirror effect on the skin. That must be to do with the static.
Oh, sure. Now, I've heard claims from other experimenters. There was a fellow named Marcus Hollingshead who claimed that his device produced a black fog. Now, is this something that you think might be comparable? Have you ever noticed a fog surrounding the SEG, or kind of a warping of light other than the mirror on the surface?
Well, no, we get the glow at the rim. The glow would depend on, obviously, the height we raise in the voltage on board. As it discharges, it gives out photons. Now, the higher the voltage is on board, when we drop it, it will give a particular colour range. Some people may see blue, others may see pink. Very rare you'll see white. Very rare indeed.
Yeah, we've noticed the same thing actually with lifters, the corona glow from the high voltage, and it's a good explanation. I've seen both blue and pink, although it sounds strange, and I guess those come from different voltage levels.
Yes, yes.
Well, I received a copy of a letter from Dr. Paul Brown to the stockholders of the Collins Corporation, and he was claiming that he built and tested an SEG in 1986. Now, I followed up on this letter by interviewing two independent sources who were close to Brown, and they both corroborate the story that he conducted this test successfully. The letter suggests that the test may have been only partially successful. He claimed that his SEG generated over 1 megawatt of electricity, but due to some errors in construction, he claimed the device actually melted and caught fire during testing. Do you know anything about Paul Brown's SEG replication from the 1980s?
No, I'm afraid I don't. I know a lot of people claim all over the world that they made the SEG, but if you were present to watch the work involved to make it, you'll realise it is extremely doubtful that they've made an SEG.
Sure. You know, I've seen a number of claims by people on the internet that they've built an SEG and didn't see any results. But most of those people, you know, they really...
I'd like to see those results myself.
Yeah, most of those people really just attached rollers to the sides of a ring. None of them used your magnetization process, and none of them apparently coated the magnets with the 4-layer electronic gating materials. So how do you respond to criticisms about the SEG from people who obviously haven't put the effort into a true replication?
Well, I don't like to down anyone's claims and that. All I like to say, it don't sound true to me from our experience. and what we're doing. Our doors are open. We're glad to show you what we are doing. And at the lecture, we're sure going to show everything we've done. So I can't be no fairer than that.
Oh, absolutely. Well, there are two Russian inventors right now named Sergei Godin and Vladimir Roshin who built and tested a modified SEG in 1992, and they claimed during that test to see the onset of classic Searl effects such as the glow around the device during operation and a self-increasing rotation speed that they used a manual handbrake to get rid of. Now, they're in the process of building a second device as we speak, and it's possible that they'll be producing video for us of their results within the year. Do you have any thoughts or predictions about their replication?
Well, no, we wish them all the luck. That's all I can say is that we wish them all the luck. They certainly will need it.
Absolutely. Well, the work they did the first time seemed very meticulous, and
Yes.
with the exception of a few modifications to the rollers, they seem to have replicated your design very faithfully. So my hope is that they will see the same effects. And the self-increasing rotation is a hallmark SEG effect that would indicate that they're close.
Yes. Well, you're welcome to our meeting so you can see with your own eyes what we're doing and how difficult it is to do.
Now, the May 9th meeting, is that something that John Thomas may have details about on the Searl Effect website?
Yes, yes. In fact, there's a lot of stuff now on the website of John's. My latest book is appearing on it as I release the pages. That shows you the things of the past, what we're doing now, the equipment involved to do it. And later we'll be doing tests, and those tests will go in on John's website. We will be showing everything. We'll leave nothing out. And that will settle all arguments about what is real and what's not.
Well, the demonstration that you're doing in May, I'm wondering if that correlates to something else that Godin and Roshin found in Russia. They were trying to find a workable alternative to your unique process for developing the magnetized rollers on the SEG. And Paul Brown, one of the things that he did that was just wonderful research was a very detailed write-up suggesting that this was a hysteresis-based AC magnetization process. Now, I've heard that it leaves magnetic stripes on the rollers that function a bit like teeth on a gear. I was wondering how you developed this process in the first place and what you can tell us about it.
Well, unfortunately, I don't know Brown's work myself. I really can't make any comments on that. All I know is that from what I hear from those people, a number of people are trying to do this. I wish them luck, but it is very difficult work. And if you were really with us, you will find out why it's difficult. A lot of patience is required, a lot of money is needed to achieve it.
Sure. Well, I've heard that magnetizing the rollers is one of the most difficult parts of building an SEG. Is that true?
It is very difficult. It's like, I don't know if you understand superconductivity. It's a very thin line. You're either on it or you're off it. 1 degree change in temperature and it's gone. The beauty of the SEG is that once you're on that line, it doesn't go regarding with the temperature outside. You have to use force to turn it off. So we're just the opposite to what is used today in a superconductive field.
Oh, it's almost a self-referential field then.
Yes.
That makes sense. That's another example that homopolar generators share. They're also self-referential in their voltages. Very, very interesting. The Disclosure Project had interviewed 2 retired military officers who recalled seeing what they believed was a UFO parked in an aircraft hangar at Edwards Air Force Base during the 1970s. Now, the story that they told really caught my eye because you've claimed to have actually loaned a disc-shaped IGV to the military, which they tested in the 1970s. Do you think that Do you think these stories may actually have been mistaken sightings of your IGV during testing?
Could be. be, it's a disappointment for me that they turned down the funding on the simple grounds they could not find any anti-gravity, any inertia involved. And that was outside their knowledge.
Oh, in other words, by not finding inertia, they simply weren't sure how to pilot it and how to really...
Yes. that is, in other words, it's got to conform to military rules and regulations. If it's outside those rules, I don't want to know.
Oh, sure. Although the lack of inertia means that you can accelerate and turn at very high speeds. And,
yes, you can. That is what put off a number of possible backers when they saw the models being demonstrated. They turned too fast at too high speed. They claim no one could survive, but they're wrong. Inside the vehicle is like you sitting in your chair talking to me now. You have no knowledge of motion, yet you're moving at fantastic speeds at this moment as you're talking to me, but you have no knowledge of it. Inside that vessel, exactly the same. You have no knowledge of movement.
Sure. Well, and if it's creating a self-referential field, inertia would be compared to the SEG and not the outside environment.
That's right.
You know, it sounds like the SEG really works by warping time and space.
Well, it does. Like I've said so often, we need a laboratory, a really proper laboratory, where we can set everything up with the latest equipment and investigate really what is happening. There's a lot of things happening we have no knowledge about. That's quite clear. I would love to have a proper laboratory, proper staff, where we can sit down, and I think in 2 years we'll be inventing some fantastic machinery by just using magnets.
Absolutely. Well, the SEG is definitely the foundation for hundreds of different ideas that have come forward since then. And,
oh, yes.
You know, I think that's really a mark par excellence as far as the work that you've done, that so many people have tried to copy it and create modifications to it. Although it probably says something that none of them have been able to achieve your success, nor your media publicity value.
And all they have to do is join me as a team. That's all they have to do, and we all get it done.
Yeah. Now, one of the things that I'd wondered about in terms of rotation was the idea that electron potentials, right, the actual voltage on a roller, is apparently related to the rotation of it. Now, I read an article about this, and it was rather confusing, but it claimed that electron voltage potentials smear out on a rotating surface, and they become only referential to the surface itself. So as long as the SEG rotates, is it true that it can contain a much higher voltage than a static device would?
I think the answer is yes. I think we can say, I'd safely say that is perhaps one of the best ways to explain this part of the effects that takes place. When you're looking at one running, it is very hard for a person to really accept what they're looking at. That there must be some trickery. And of course you're looking for strange wires attached to it, or batteries parked in somewhere. It is difficult for the human mind to accept what they're looking at. It takes time. And when you work in a team, your mind is seeing it all the time, and it accepts it. But many people would come and they would say, oh, that's a trick. That's a big trick.
You know, we encountered the same thing with the lifter technology. The
Yes.
lifters are very, small devices that will literally hang in the air, and they're not as efficient as the SEG, but they do cause a lot of inquiry. People walk away scratching their heads because it's
Yes.
difficult for the mind
Well,
to
these
accept.
magnets do. You always see that the scientists, when they're watching the action of the magnet, they really pull their hair trying to work out how on earth that goes round that bar. And if you reverse a magnet, it comes down the bar jumps away from the end, round in a circle and back to the other side and carries on. It's unbelievable that any magnet can do that. I see no other magnets displays that can perform that function.
Well, I think it's also important to note that Albert Einstein based his ideas on gravity from observing magnetism. And he always considered magnetism to be very similar to gravity in the way it functioned. But it seems like he never really made the leap between magnetism as a warping of time and space when he obviously suggested that gravity was.
Yes, I could appreciate his point of view. But before I start saying too much, I do need the lab team to sit down and really look at what we got. It's a fantastic world. It's beautiful. It really fascinates your mind. And if you ever come in when we're demonstrating a setup with just magnetized, you will see what we mean.
Sure.
And we say,
sure.
It's fantastic.
Well, if people want to learn more about the Searl Effect, probably the best source of information on your research right now is online at www.searleffect.com. And this site is being run by John Thomas, who has been working with you for several years to complete a final SEG replication that he can then show to the media on film and television. Can you tell me a bit about John Thomas and the efforts that he's made in assembling a modern-day SEG?
Yes, John's a long way away from me, so I cannot really see everything he's done. But it's coming to the meeting. He'll be giving his talk showing what he's done. So I'll be updated what he's achieved.
Okay. And, well, I guess my final question today is that the Searl Effect had the power to change the course of the 20th century by eliminating our energy concerns and by making the stars accessible to mankind. In hindsight, what was the biggest single thing that prevented this from ultimately happening? And what can we do in the 21st century to make the dream of the Searl Effect a commercial reality?
Well, unfortunately, the reality of this was nothing to do with governments. That's the strange thing about it. It was due to members of the family who want to stop it, or members of the team who want to own it. That has always been the problem. It's a pity. It has nothing to do with the government. All the governments I talk to want to see me do it.
Absolutely. So it really comes down to putting together a team that isn't driven by some of the more personal motivations that have been in the past, right?
That's right. You give me that team, in 12 months you'll be surprised what we can produce. The world will change. That is a fact. The way you go to work, the way you come home, what you do at home, how you work, all that will change. You'll be working in a negative state. You'll feel good. You won't get headaches. You'll feel really well. And secondly is, you come home, you can do another day's work. I know, for the years I was with the SEG, I could do anything. I could work long hours, day and night with no trouble. Now, without SEG, I feel the strain.
Absolutely. Well, thanks again for your time, John. It's been an honor and a privilege to do this interview with you, and I have no doubts that this will definitely help in bringing the SEG into the 21st century.
Well, I hope so. I hope that the day will come when you can be with us and see for yourself what we're doing.
I definitely look forward to it.